Hello everyone! So today we are going to be drawing Sonic the Hedgehog as per request from one of my marvellous students, Thomas. So what I'm doing over here first of all is just measuring out the space that I have and trying to get a suggestion of the top of his head and the top of his ears. I don't want to run out of space if I make the head too big and then not be able to fit his body in. And neither do I want to make a little teeny tiny Sonic in the middle of the page. I want him to fill up the page nicely. So I'm measuring with my pencil how large Sonic's head is. And then I'm measuring the body in comparison. Now when I measured this Sonic that I found here on the internet, I've actually found that his tummy is only half as big as his head, half as long as his head, which is surprising. You would think the tummy must be at least the same size, but it's not. So it's always worth checking out your measurements first because sometimes they're quite surprising. I measured the legs too, and the legs compared to the head are the full length of his head again. So you can follow this exact measurement here and do the same design that I'm doing, or perhaps you found a different illustration that you'd like to try of Sonic, but do make sure to measure those crucial parts because otherwise you'll end up with a very funny looking Sonic. He has disproportionately large legs for his little body, but that's what makes him look like a proper Sonic. So when I measured the size of the shoes, his feet are actually really freakishly quite large. So the full length of his shoe from heel to toe was actually about the same as his whole leg again. So I'm just getting in the gentle sort of curve of the top of his shoe there. He's got like a white stripe, a white band that goes across his red shoe. He's got that nice little sort of boot cuff, let's call it. It's like two donuts sitting one on top of the other that starts from his ankles and goes down. Now the second shoe here must sit a little bit further back for this pose because it's in the distance, it's further behind the other one, so it's going to appear slightly further away. So I'm just adding now his little tummy. It's almost like a sort of a kidney bean type shape, and that's going to be a sort of a pinkish light browny type colour, and then a little bit of a rim around where it's going to be blue. Now a sort of an upside down U shape for the bottom of his face, quite a sort of a wide U, and then we've got a few little bumps there that make the upper part of his mouth. One smaller bump, then the nose, then a much larger one because he's actually turning slightly away from us, so one side of him will appear slightly smaller. Now working on the slightly smaller of his two eyes, we have the side of his face comes out from the bottom of his ear and around in a gentle curve to meet with the top of his mouth. And then I'm just slotting that little eye in there. I'm measuring where it would go. I can see on my picture that it's just above his nose. That's where it ends. So I'm just finishing that one off, and now I'm comparing the height with the second eye. So by laying my pencil across the picture, I could see that the second eye is actually slightly higher up. And now I'm just measuring the width of the eye. So when I measured a little bit with my pencil there, look, it's actually 2 and maybe 1/4 times wider, the eye which is closer to us. So it's important if you're trying to show that sort of twisted pose of Sonic that the eye which is closer to you would be definitely quite a bit bigger. So inside his eye we have an oval for the green part of his eye, which is a little bit larger, and then a smaller black oval that just sits inside. I always think he looks very mischievous, like he's going to be up to no good. So we have a couple of nice big curves that follow around the eye shape, and those will be his sort of brows, I guess. He's sort of got a little bit of a frown where they meet in the middle. Just fixing the edge there, and I'm working very lightly with this pencil so it's nice and easy to erase when I make a mistake. As you see here, I am very often making little mistakes, and I'm just fixing them as I go along. So now we've got to work on the spikes at the back of his head. Now this one is coming out about as far as his eyes are wide again. So I'm comparing my original picture that I'm seeing here, and that was about the distance. Now, I actually had a little bit of a technical failure there. My camera stopped recording, so as you can see, I've kind of sped up and I've done all of these parts already. I'm sorry about that, but I will show you now how I'm going over them with black marker, and you'll be able to see the shapes that you've missed. So we have 3 spikes on the back of his head, and then we have this arm that's coming out just from below the bottom of his chin, and he's got a bent elbow that's just tucking in to his body, and he's wearing this funny little glove that has the 2 rings at the top, just like the boot cuffs. They look like a pair of donuts sitting on top of each other, and then a sort of a U shape coming down for his hand, and just a couple of fingers showing where it's curled behind. Now the other arm is just popping out from underneath his tummy, just ever so slightly. We're not seeing all of that arm because it's coming from behind, and this arm is holding a giant golden ring. So you can see I've just made a little mistake there, so I'm just fixing it by adding a double line of my black pen to make it look like it was entirely intentional. And here, just to try and get that shape of that ring, I'm actually going over my lines several times with my black. It's just going to look like there was a little bit of a shadow there, but actually it's me fixing my mistakes, just making sure that it looks okay. So I'm just outlining the shoes now, and this ring is being held by his hand. He's got one thumb just sort of hanging over the edge, and then the 3 little fingers wrapping from underneath. So we're pretty much done with our design now. If you would like to, you could add some stars in the background. These were on the original picture that I saw, that I took my inspiration from. You can work on your 5-pointed stars first on a separate piece of paper if you're not quite sure about how they will look. And I'm just outlining them here all in black, and then I'm going to be erasing that pencil so it all looks nice and neat before I start adding the colour. So that's looking fairly good. I'm going to be using my Caran d'Ache Fibrello, no, not my Fibrello markers, sorry, what am I saying? I'm using my Supracolor Caran d'Ache pencils. They're watercolour pencils, and I'll be using my watercolour crayons. They're called Neocolor crayons. I'm going to be using those as well, just because they have some slightly different colours in them that I don't have available in my pencils. So I'm using my pencil colours just to add the darkest areas of blue that I can see there. I've used some reds and some little hints of orange and even a bit of brown on his shoes to show the shadows. I'm making sure not to leave the white of his boots or gloves or eyes pure white, because I want it to look really 3D. So I'm giving a little bit of grey shadow to each of those white areas. And we're using some light pink and a little bit of brown for the arms, his tummy and his ears. Now I'm just adding the water to this, but you can see when it didn't have any water on it, that is how it would look if you didn't have watercolor pencils. If you were just using regular pencils, you could just leave it like that. That is fine too. It looks pretty cool. I just like to use these watercolor ones for a lot of the stuff that I do. And I would always say, if you can manage to get some watercolor pencils, they seem to be of a much higher quality than regular pencil colors. Even if you use them dry, they just seem to have a lot more pigment in them somehow. So the kids in my art class, we barely ever use regular pencils. We always use watercolors, even when we're not planning to add water to them. So I actually have this really cool metallic gold paint at home, so I'm just adding that to my stars and to the golden ring. You don't have to use gold paint. This is how it looks when it's halfway finished. But if you don't have gold paint, you could just use yellow color. That would be fine as well, or you might have some glitter perhaps, and that would also look really cool in your areas where you've got the gold. So I'm just adding some little simple ziggy-zaggy lines for the grass here, just to make him look like he's got something to stand on. I wanted to keep it sort of quite simple, so it looks like a computer game style, so it looks like the kind of world that Sonic the Hedgehog might actually be in. And I'm just going to add a slightly darker green first of all over these grassy tufts and over the top line of the horizon there where the grass ends, and then I'm filling in all the rest of the space with a really light green, sort of very bright light green colour. And I think the two will look really nice together when I've added the water. So now I'm just adding some little dash lines. You could use a ruler for this and a pencil first, just so it looks like he's in a kind of a starburst, like a halo, where he's caught this ring and these stars are flying off around him, and he's kind of in this moment of glory, and he's basking in the light of this glow of this ring here. So I'm just adding the water now to the grass, and as you can see, in the areas around him in the sky, I've left those little sort of dashy lines that I've made. I've left them all white in the middle, and I'm doing a really dark blue towards the edge, and then a sort of slightly lighter blue, and then I'm just flicking them out with the water towards Sonic, but I'm not going all the way to touch his body. I want to leave that white area around him. So always flicking them into the direction of his body, but stopping just before I reach the white or the yellow area. Now I'm not going to add water at the same time to the yellow area, because yellow and blue will just mix to make green, and that wasn't the look that I wanted for this. So I'm doing all my blue first, and then when it's pretty much drying off already, I'm adding water to the yellow. Now I'm adding a little bit of a darker blue right around the edge here, because I just felt like it really needed a little bit more contrast. So it's just the same process again, adding the crayon first, then the water, always flicking those lines into the center so they're all pointing towards Sonic. So that's the finished Sonic the Hedgehog. I do hope you like him and you will give him a go. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this, I have lots of other drawing tutorials and lessons available on YouTube and also at carlyart.org. So I'm just going to show you some great artworks that my students have been sending me from the tutorials they've been following. This is BB-8 by Benny, a drippy rainbow from Oake. We have a cool drippy rainbow from Cosima here too. And Eleanor has done the bacteria quick draw. Over here we have a really cool unicorn from Anya, a rainbow bird from Maria. Larissa has been busy drawing both a robot and a Spinosaurus. And Larson has been drawing a super cool robot too. Oake has done the bacteria quick draw, and Benny has done the Spinosaurus. These are some great colours, Benny. This is Anya's Spinosaurus and Larson's Spinosaurus. You guys just love those dinosaurs.